Hi, ladies and gentlemen. This is Halima from languagespot. Today we are going to practice English by listening to short stories. For trading, my love of novelty soon again prevailed. I therefore settled my affairs and provided a stock of goods fit for the traffic I desired to engage in. I took the route to Persia, traveled over several provinces, and then arrived at a port where I embarked. On putting out to sea, we were overtaken by such a sudden gust of wind as obliged the captain to lower his yard and take all other necessary precaution to prevent the danger that threatened us. But all was in vain. Our endeavors had no effect. The sails were split in thousand pieces, and the ship was stranded. Several of the merchants and the seamen were drowned, and the cargo was lost. I had the good fortune with several of the merchants and mariners to get upon some planks, and we were carried by the current to an island which lay before us. There we find fruit and spring water, which preserved our lives. We stayed all night near the place where we had been cast ashore. Next morning, as soon as the sun was up, we explored the island and saw some houses which we approached. As soon as we drew near, we were encompassed by a great number of negroes who seized us, shared us among them, and carried us to their respective habitation. I and five of my comrades were carried to one place. Here they made us sit down and gave us a certain herb, which they made signs to us to eat. My comrades not taking notice that the blacks ate none of it themselves, though only of satisfying their hunger, and ate with greediness. But I suspected some trick, would not so much as taste it, which happened well for me. For in a little time after I perceived my companion had lost their senses, and that when they spoke to me they knew not what they said. The negroes fed us afterward with rice, prepared with oil of coconut, and my comrades who had lost their reason ate of it greedily. I also partook of it, but very sparingly. They gave us that herb at first on purpose to deprive us of our senses, that we might not be aware of the sad destiny prepared for us, and they supplied us with rice to fatten us, for, being cannibals, their design was to eat us as soon as we grow fat. This accordingly happened, for they devoured comrades who were not sensible of their condition. But my senses being entire, you may easily guess that instead of growing fat, as the rest did, I grow leaner every day. The fear of death turned all my food into poison. I fell into a languishing distemper, which proved my safety, for the negroes having killed and eaten my companions, seeing me to be withered, lean, and sick, they feared my death. Meanwhile, I had much liberty, so that scarcely any notice was taken of what I did, and this gave me an opportunity one day to get at a distance from the houses, and to make my escape. An old man who saw me and suspected my design called to me as loud as he could to return, but instead of obeying him, I redoubled my speed, and quickly got out of sight. At that time there was none but the old man about the houses, the rest being abroad, and not to return till night, which was usual with them. Therefore, being sure that they could not arrive in a time to pursue me, I went on till night, when I stopped to rest a little and to eat some of the provision I had secured. By I speedily set forward again, and travelled 7 days, avoiding those places which seemed to be inhabited, and lived for the most part upon coconuts, which served me both for meat and drink. On the 8th day I came near the sea, and saw some white people like myself gathering pepper. of which there was great plenty in that place. This I took to be a good omen, and went to them without any scruple. The people who gathered pepper came to me as soon as they saw me, and asked me in Arabic who I was, and once I came, I was overjoyed to hear them speak in my own language, and I satisfied their curiosity by giving them an account of my shipwreck and how I fell into the hands of the Negroes. Those Negroes, replied they, eat men, and by what miracle did you escape their cruelty? I related to them the circumstances I have just mentioned, at which they were wonderfully surprised. I stayed with them till they had gathered their quantity of paper, and then sailed with them to the island from whence they had come. They presented me to their king, who was a good prince. He had the patience to hear the relation of my adventures, which surprised him, and he afterward gave me clothes and commanded care to be taken of me. The island was very well peopled, plentiful in everything, and the capital a place of great trade. This agreeable trade was very comfortable to me after misfortunes, and the kindness of this generous prince completed my satisfaction. In word, there was not a person more in favor with him than myself, and consequently every man in the court and city sought to oblige me, so that in a very little time I was looked upon rather as a native than a stranger. I observed one thing which to me appeared very extraordinary. All the people, the king himself not excepted, rode their horses without bridle or stirrups. I went one day to a workman and gave him a model for making the stocks of a saddle. When that was done, I covered myself with velvet and leather, and embroidered it with gold. I afterward went to a smith, who made me a bed according to the pattern I showed him, and also some stirrups. When I had all things completed, I presented them to the king, and put them upon one of his horses. His Majesty mounted immediately, and was so pleased with them that he testified his satisfaction by large presents. I made several others for the ministers and principal officers of his household, which gained me great reputation and regard. As I paid my court very constantly to the king, he said to me one day, Sindbad, I love thee. I have one thing to demand of thee, which thou must grant. I have a mind thou shouldst marry, that so thou mightst stay in my dominion, and think no more of thy own country. I durst not resist the prince well, and he gave me one of the ladies of his court, noble, beautiful, and rich. The ceremonies of marriage being over, I went and dwelt with my wife, and for some time we lived together in perfect harmony. I was not, however, satisfied with my banishment, therefore I designed to make my escape at the first opportunity, and to return to Baghdad, which my present settlement, how advantageous soever, could not make me forget. At this time the wife of one of my neighbours, with whom I had contracted a very strict friendship, fell sick and died. I went to see and comfort him in his affliction, and finding him absorbed in sorrow, I said to him as soon as I saw him, God preserve you and grant you a long life. Alas, replied he, how do you think I should obtain the favor you wish me? I have not above an hour to live, for I must be buried this day with my wife. This is a law on this island. The living husband is interred with the dead wife, and the living wife with the dead husband. While he was giving me an account of this barbarous custom, the very relation of which chilled my blood, His kindred friends and neighbors came to assist at the funeral. They dressed the corpse of the woman in her richest apparel and all her jewels as if it had been her wedding day. Then they placed it on an open bier and began their march to the place of burial. The husband walked first next to the dead body. They proceeded to a high mountain, and when they had reached the place of their destination, they took up a large stone which formed the mouth of a deep pit, and let down the body with all its apparel and jewels. Then the husband embarrassed his kindred and friends without resistance, suffered himself to be placed on another bier, with a pit of ware and 7 small loaves, and was laid down in the same manner. The ceremony being over, the mouth of the pit was again covered with the stone, and the company returned. I mentioned this ceremony the more particularly because I was in a few weeks' time to be a principal actor on a similar occasion. Alas, my own wife fell sick and died. I made every remonstrance I could to the king not to expose me, a foreigner, to this inhuman law. I appealed in vain. The king and all his court, with the most considerable persons of the city, sought to soften my sorrow by honoring the funeral ceremonies with their presence, and at the termination of the ceremony I was lowered into the pit with a vessel full of water and 7 loaves. As I approached the bottom, I discovered by the aid of the little light that came from above the nature of this subterranean place. It seemed an endless cavern, and might be about 50 fathoms deep. I lived for some time upon my bread and water, when one day, just as I was on the point of exhaustion, I heard something tread and Britain panted as it moved. I followed this sound. The animal seemed to stop sometimes, but always fled on, breathed hard as I approached. I pursued it for a considerable time, till at last I perceived a light resembling a star. I went on, sometimes lost sight of it, but always found it again, and at last discovered that it came through a hole in the rock, which I got through, and found myself upon the seashore, at which I felt exceeding joy. I prostrated myself on the shore to thank God for this mercy, and shortly afterward I perceived a ship making for the place where I was. I made a sign with the lining of my turban and called to the crew as loud as I could. They heard me and sent a boat to bring me on board. It is fortunate for me that these people did not inspect the place where they found me, but without hesitation took me on board. We passed by several islands, and among others that called the Isle of Bells, about 10 days' sails from Serendib, with a regular wind, and 6 from that of Gala, where we landed. Lead mines are found in the island, also Indian cans, and excellent comfort. The king of the Isle of Gila is very rich and powerful, and the Isle of Bells, which is about 2 days' journey away, is also subject to him. The inhabitants are so barbarous that they still eat human flesh. After we had finished our traffic in that island, we put to sea again and touched at several other ports. At last I arrived happily at Baghdad. Out of gratitude to God for his mercies, I contributed liberally toward the support of several mosques and the subsistence of the poor, and enjoyed myself with my friends in festivities and amusement. Here Sindbad made a new present of 100 sequins to Hindbad, whom he requested to return with the rest next day at the same hour to dine with him and hear the story of his fifth voyage. The Fifth Voyage of Sindbad the Sailor. All the troubles and calamities I had undergone could not cure me of my inclination to make new voyages. I therefore bought goods, departed with them for the best seaport in there, that I might not be obliged to depend upon a captain, but have a ship at my own commands. I remained till one was built on purpose at my own charge. When the ship was ready, I went on board with my goods, but not having enough to load her, I agreed to take with me several merchants of different nations with their merchandise. We sailed with the first fair wind, and after long navigation, the first place we touched at was a desert island, where we found an egg of rock, equal in size to that I formerly mentioned. There was a young rock in it, just ready to be hatched, and its beak had begun to break the egg. The merchant who landed with me broke the egg with hatchet, and making a hole in it, pulled out the young rock piecemeal and roasted it. I had in vain entreated them not to meddle with the egg. Scarcely had they finished their repast when there appeared in the air at a considerable distance two great clouds. The captain of my ship, knowing by experience what they meant, said they were the male and female parent of the rock, and pressed us to re-embark with all speed to prevent the misfortune which we saw would otherwise befall us. The two rocks approached with a frightful noise, and they redoubled when they saw the egg broken and their young one gone. They flew back in the direction they had come, and despaired for some time, while we made all the sail we could in the endeavor to prevent that which unhappily befell us. They soon returned, as we observed that each of them carried between its talons an enormous rock. When they came directly over my ship, they hovered, and one of them let go his rock, but by the dexterity of the steersman it missed us and fell into the sea. The other so exactly hit the middle of the ship as to split it into pieces. The mariners and passengers were all crushed to death and fell into the sea. I myself was of a number of the latter, but as I came up again I fortunately got hold of a piece of wreck, and swimming, sometimes with one hand and sometimes with the other, but always holding fast the plank, the wind and the tide favoring me, I came to an island and got safely ashore. I sat down upon the grass to recover myself from my fatigue, after which I went into the island to explore it. It seemed to be a delicious garden. I found trees everywhere, some of them bearing green and others ripe fruits, and stream or fresh pure water. I ate of the fruit which I found excellent, and drank of the water which was very light and good. When I was a little advanced into the island, I saw an old man who appeared very weak and infirm. He was he was sitting on the bank of a stream, and at first I took him to be one who had been shipwrecked like myself. I went toward him and saluted him, but he only slightly bowed his head. I asked him why he sat so still, but instead of answering me, he made a sign for me to take him upon my back and carried him over the brook. I believed him really to stand in need of my assistance, took him upon my back, and having carried him over, bade him get down and for that end stupid, that he might get off with ease. But instead of doing so, which I laugh at every time I think of it, the old man, who to me appeared quite decrepit, threw his leg nimbly about my neck. He sat astride upon my shoulders and held my throat so tight that I thought he would have strangled me, and I fainted away. Notwithstanding my hinting, the ill-natured old fellow still kept his set upon my neck. When I had recovered my breath, he thrust one of his feet against my side and struck me so rudely with the other that he forced me to rise up against my will. Having risen, he made me carry him under the trees and forced me now and then to stop, that he might gather and eat fruit. He never left his seat all day, and when I lay down to rest at night, he laid himself down with me, still holding fast about my neck. Every morning he pinched me to make me awake, and afterward obliged me to get up and walk, and spurred me with his feet. One day I found several dry calabashes that had fallen from a tree. I took a large one, and after cleaning it, pressed into it some juice of grapes, which abounded in the island. Having filled the calabash, I put it by a convenient place, and going thither again some days after, I tasted it and found the wine so good that it gave me new vigor and so exhilarated my spirit, and I began to sing and dance as I carried my burden. The old man, perceiving the effect which he had upon me, and that I carried him with more ease than before, made me a sign to give him some of it. I handed him the calabash, and the liquor pleasing his palate, he drank it off. There being a considerable quantity of it, he soon began to sing and to move about from side to side in his seat upon my shoulders, and by degrees to loosen his legs from about me. Finding that he did not press me as before, I threw him upon the ground, where he lay without motion. I then took up a great stone and slew him. I was extremely glad to be thus free from this troublesome fellow. I now walked toward the beach, where I met the crew of a ship that had cast on shore to take in war. They were surprised to see me, but more so at hearing the particulars of my adventures. "You fell," said they, "into the hands of the old man of the sea, and are the first who ever escaped strangling by his malicious embarrasses. He never quitted those he had once made himself master of, till he had destroyed them, and he has made this island notorious by the number of men he has slain. They carried me with them to the captain, who received me with great kindness. He put out again to sea, and after some days' sail we arrived at the harbor of the great city, the house of which overhang the sea. One of the merchants who had taken me into his friendship invited me to go along with him. He gave me a large sack, and having recommended me to some people of the town who used to gather coconuts, desired them to take me with them. "Go," said he, "follow them, and act as you see them do, but do not separate from them, otherwise you may endanger your life." Having thus spoken, he gave me provisions for the journey, and I went with them. We came to a thick forest of cocoa palms, very lofty, with trunks so smooth that it was not possible to climb to the branches that bore the fruit. When we entered the forest, we saw a great number of apes of several sizes, who fled as soon as they perceived us, and climbed to the top of the tree with amazing swiftness. The merchant with whom I was gathered stone and showed them at the apes on the trees. I did the same, and the apes, out of revenge, threw coconuts at us so fast, and with such a gesture as satisfactorily justified their anger and resentment. We gathered up the coconut, and from time to time threw stones to provoke the apes, so that by the stratagem we filled our back with coconut. I thus gradually collected as many coconuts as produced me a considerable sum. Having laden our vessel with coconuts, we set sail. and passed by the islands where pepper grows in great plenty. For thence we went to the Isle of Comari, where the best species of wood of aloes grows. I exchanged my coconut in those two islands for pepper and wood of aloes, and went with other merchants pearl fishing. I hired divers who brought me up, some that were very large and pure. I embarked in vessel that happily arrived at Bussorah, for thence I returned to Baghdad, where I realized vast sums from my pepper, wood of aloes and pearls. I gave the tenth of my gains in alms, as I had done upon my return from my other voyages, and rested from my fatigues. Sindbad here ordered 100 squins to be given to Hindbad, and requested him and the other guests to dine with him the next day to hear the account of his sixth voyage. Thank you so much for being with me. Hope you liked the video and share it with your friends. See you next time and bye bye.